Jay, first of all, welcome back. We are thrilled to have you back on the air with us for another season. We'll be doing this all season long on Mondays, normally at 5 p.m. So, welcome back aboard. We're pumped, man.
It's exciting to be back with two legends.
You're correct about that.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
true.
It's exciting
Yes,
to have
you're
you back
nice.
as
yes.
well. How much should we take out of a week one game? Because I've been fooled many a time by the first game of the season.
Yeah, that's it's tough. You know, you can't get too high after a win, you can't get too low after a loss. There's some major concerns though after one game, and I talk about the defense. You know, there's not a lot of pressure. The coverage was poor. They lost coverage a couple times. Took some poor angles tackling the ball carriers. You know, Tampa Bay's got a decent offense, but they're not that good now. I mean, there's no reason to put up 37 against Washington's defense. So that's number one concern. And obviously, number two, we just got to get Jayden some reps, get him some work. And I think over the course of the season, he'll continue to get better and better. Once they trust him a little bit more in the pocket, they trust the left tackle a little bit more, they'll be able to do some more things down the field. But right now, it's Chinese fire drill damn near. He's scrambling for his life and just running for yards. So they got to get him protected and let him work his magic. And hopefully that'll happen coming up if they get some more weapons around Terry McLaurin.
Did you see anything that made you think maybe they didn't trust him in the pocket, or that they were calling things to help themselves because of the left tackle?
Yeah, I think a lot of teams were like that this year. I had never seen so many bubble screens and screens of the running back as I have in 1 week of football. I think a lot of people are a little bit concerned about the pass rush and their offensive line. They just want the quarterbacks to get through a game, get some easy completions for them, let the guys run after the catch. So, yeah, I think there's some element to that. Left tackle, rookie quarterback. Let's get some easy completions for them. Hopefully our playmakers can make some plays outside on the perimeter.
What did you see from Daniels specifically, Jay, just in terms of his performance? That first throw behind the line of scrimmage for a loss of 15 yards, just kind of an inauspicious debut. But how did you feel about him in general?
Yeah, he's done it twice this year already. He did it in the first preseason game. Eckler threw it over his head on a screen pass, and then did it again. You don't see that very often in a whole career, let alone twice in 3 games. But yeah, he's just got to calm down and relax a little bit. The one thing about Jayden, I studied him a lot in college at Arizona State. He looked to run more than he did to throw, and I think he went back to his old ways a little bit. And a lot of that was the pass rush was there, and a lot of the receivers weren't getting a lot of separation either. So this is an LSU where he's got Brian Thomas Jr. and those other receivers getting open all downfield. These guys weren't getting open a whole lot, so he had to run. So hopefully moving forward, we get some completions where he can see the field a little bit, get some balls on basic crossing routes or high crosses or shallow crosses or something where the receivers can get open and get some separation.
16 runs in the game. 11 were just scrambles, and then 5 were designs, a couple read options, naked on a 4th down on a boot. And then there were 2 powers that they ran as well. All 5 of the design runs were in the second half. But again, 11 of the 16 were scrambles. Just your thoughts on that number of runs for him.
Yeah, well, the scrambles are going to happen. He's going to have 5 or 6 of those a game through the entire season. There's no doubt about that. That's what he does. That's what he does well. I wouldn't limit that. I wouldn't be upset at that at all because he's going to make some big plays outside the pocket. I'm a little concerned with the design runs inside the tackles. That he's not a very big guy. They ran one weak side inside zone with him just right between the tackles. And then the last touchdown he ran was an option. He cut up right into the defensive lineman. And that is a dangerous play for a quarterback to stick his foot in the ground and run right behind the center guard area, just get smashed. Of course, he got in for a touchdown, but I don't like those. So let's get him outside the pocket. Let's do some zone reads and things of that nature where he can avoid contact and get to the sideline if he has to.
So I'm all for these scrambles too, because generally, especially if he's pressured, I think he was pressured 12 times in the game. You might as well get out of there, use your speed, and get away. But going back and rewatching already, the 16 scrambles from the aerial view, like there are times where he's got options. And my big thing is, and I know it's one game, so I'm not saying like this is going to be the case all year, but I'd like to get to a point, and I don't know how you coach this, Jay, where he's like evading and dashing out of the pocket to reset to be a thrower. Like go get into space, run into space and reset at the sticks. And now look downfield and 2 guys have uncovered and plastered and you can now pick up a big chunk. Whereas it seemed to me like as soon as he pulled the ball down, it was kind of a one-dimensional thought of running.
Yeah, like I said, that was what he was at Arizona State. At LSU, he honed it in a little bit, really worked his receivers. And Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. got drafted in the first round because of their talent and because of Jayden Daniels making those throws down the field and avoiding rushes and keeping his eyes down the field and being a passer, not just a runner. He resorted back to some of his habits. I think his first game jitters a little bit. Maybe saw some green grass. He did make some productive runs outside the pocket on scramble drills. But I think as the season goes on, the more he gets to play, the more opportunities he'll give to his receivers when he does break contain. But he is a dangerous runner. I mean, you can't argue the fact that he had 70 or 80 yards rushing. I mean, that's pretty good. But eventually, we want to see him throw the ball down the field to Terry and some of these other guys.
Jay Gruden with us here on G&D. Jay, you mentioned last year to us that some of the concepts or designs of in terms of the routes and things didn't make a ton of sense just conceptually to you. I know it's only week one, but I know you mentioned there weren't a ton of guys open. Just give me your thoughts on what you saw week one here from Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, I think that he was being very protective of his quarterback and obviously his left tackle. So he was pretty simple. Not a lot of motions, not a lot of unique formations or personnel groupings. He was pretty standard in a set. Let the quarterback call the plays and just get out there and try to perform at a high level with simple, basic play concepts. You know, eventually, hopefully, they'll get to moving some people around, use some motions, get Terry in different locations, and try to work him a little bit more. But I think week one, I think this is a building block type of year for a young quarterback. You can't throw too much at him week one. So it's going to be a very limited arsenal of weapons or plays week one, and then hopefully week two will grow. Week three will grow even more, and then week four will continue to grow. So week one, I didn't expect to see a whole lot, but we'll see how he does week 2 and 3.
Jay, they didn't use McLaurin, who you mentioned a lot, and Austin Eckler only had a couple catches kind of before the end of the third quarter, and that's just something I just sort of can't really live with. How do you combine those sorts of concepts that you're talking about, try to make it simple and easy? What's simpler and easier than getting the ball to your two best playmakers, in my opinion, at least, on offense? What did you make of the fact that those guys weren't really involved until late?
Yeah, you're right. And, you know, and when Eckler did get the catches, he had like a 30-yard catch and made people miss. So there's definitely a feeling out period with your offensive coordinator and your roster. And once you see these guys make plays on game day, you're going to utilize them more and more as the season goes on. Wow, Austin still does have a little juice left in him. Let's get him out in space. Let's work him out some option routes and things of that nature that are easy for the quarterback to read. Let's get these other guys the ball somehow. You know, I don't know who else we're throwing the ball to. I still think we need another weapon outside of Terry. I don't know who that is. But obviously, Eckler's pretty good. Ertz has lost a step a little bit. So, you know, the tight end presence isn't that glaring either. So somebody's got to step up and make some plays outside of Terry and Eckler.
Two things, Jay, that I want to get your thoughts on as a play designer and a play caller and as an offensive mind. Number one would be just lining up a receiver in the same spot all the time. Terry McLaurin was on the left, like flanked out on like 42 of his 49 plays. I think he was in the slot 6 times, but he was only on the right side of the formation 3 times. And I think he only went in motion once. And I juxtapose that, and I know you kind of referenced the motion thing, but I juxtapose that with Cooper Kupp, who was in motion on 30 of 42 snaps for Sean McVay and caught 12 catches last night on plays where he was in motion before the snap. One of the longtime knocks on Kingsbury's offense has been, like with DeAndre Hopkins, he always lined up on the far left of the formation, never moved around, was never in motion. I mean, do you perceive that as an issue? How often would you use motion in your offenses? And like, what do you make of, if I was to go back, like, did you always have Pierre lined up in the same spot, or is that uncommon?
I think it's very uncommon. You know, when you have a good player, you got to move them around because it's very easy for defenses to line up their best corner on that side every time or cloud them every time. But when you move them around left to right, put them in the slot, put them at number 2 in trips, number 3 in trips on the inside. Now all of a sudden your corner's got to travel if you want to play man. It's hard to cloud that side of the field all the time. There's a lot of different things you can do with the receiver. When you line them up in one spot, you become very bland and plain. And he does have a history of doing that. But he's going to have to grow a little bit, I think. He's got to move Terry. He's too good to just line up outside the numbers on the left side 42 times out of 49. There's got to be different ways to use him because he is a great football player, and he can do a lot of different things in different locations.
35% pre-snap motion rate on pass plays in week 1, which was, I think, like 7th lowest in the league. But that's been a staple. Like in the 4 years in Arizona, it was one of the things Cliff was known for. How about that part of it? Just like for you, what ways did you use motion, and and just kind of on an elementary level, kind of talk to me like I'm dumb here, which I am.
Yeah, we are pretty dumb.
But like,
Well,
what
first of
would
all,
be his
motions.
logic on that? Like, if I was to ask
Well,
him, why don't you use motion more? What would he say?
well, I think week one with Jayden Daniels, when you use motion, that's more terminology in the play call, and sometimes the play calls can be wordy and as it is. I think Cliff is known for using one word play calls on just about everything, and everybody kind of knows where to line up. They line up in the same spot all the time, so he makes it simple for the quarterback. Hey, uh, American Airlines means this, and everybody knows what to do. That's all well and good, but eventually you got to branch off and get these guys moving around and motions and all that stuff. So to utilize motions and formations is critical for pre-snap recognition for a quarterback. If somebody travels with the receiver, it's man-to-man. If you put a tight end outside the tackle box and the safety goes out with him, it's man-to-man. So there's a lot of different things for the quarterback, knows where to go with the ball, knows which matchup he wants to work. Maybe audibles to a play. You see a split safety, maybe audible to a run, maybe you get into your favorite cover two or quarters beater. There's a lot of good utilization of motions and formations that give quarterbacks pre-snap knowledge, which is critical for young players.
Jay, and this is always so hard. We're talking about one game, and we never know who to ascribe blame or credit to in every situation. But just in general, what did you make of Dan Quinn's first game as head coach here in Washington?
I mean, it's his first game. I think obviously people have been critical of not going for two, which I think he made a mistake there clearly at the end of the third quarter. You got to go for two. Anytime you have a chance to cut a lead down to one possession as opposed to two possessions, you got to do that. That's the easy one. But overall, I just a little disappointed in defense. Some of the angles they took, some of the coverages they blew. This is not a very difficult defense for players to learn, and you got to put some accountability on the players as well. They got to play better, they got to tackle better. But overall, when you lose like that to Tampa Bay, who they're a good football team, they went to the playoffs obviously, but I don't think they're 37-20 better than Washington. So a lot of learning to do, but Dan's a good football coach, a good motivator. Hopefully, he'll get them going.
Jay Gruden on Grant and Danny here on the Fan. I'm trying to remember when you were here, what was like the worst it got from a place kicking standpoint. Were you ever like on a carousel with kickers, or did you just have to replace one here or there?
We had Kai Forbath early, who's a very accurate kicker, one of the most accurate kickers around. But his kickoff skills weren't very good, and we couldn't kick long field goals. So we went to Hopkins, and I don't remember really going anywhere else other than Hopkins.
D-Hop was around
for
years after that, so you didn't deal with it.
Hop was a very good kicker. We got lucky. We found him. We worked him out, and he ended up beating out Forbath. So we were fortunate not to have to go through that. And we got Tressway pretty early too, and he was our punter. So, and our long snapper was Sundberg, so we didn't have to mess with the specialist. That was critical. That's something you don't want to play around with. That's a pain in the ass.
And to that point, that's where they are. I mean, with McManus counted, and they cut him obviously with the allegations that came up. They've been through 5 kickers since free agency now. They cut McManus, and if you just start a training camp, it's been now 4 kickers. They had Ramiz Ahmed signed and cut. Riley Patterson signed or cut. They traded for Cade York, who they've since cut today, and now they're bringing in Austin Seibert. I guess first, the thought on maybe after one game getting rid of a kicker, a complicated situation because they did it because they'd lose a 7th-round pick if he kicked in 2 games. That was the condition on the conditional pick, so they had to make the decision this week if they wanted to move forward or not, and he went 0 for 2. But just in general, like you mentioned what a big deal that is as a coach, like the fact that they're on this carousel now and how uneasy that makes you.
Oh, it's very difficult, but it's just look at the game when they had 4th and 10 and they tried a 56-yard field goal with the young kicker or the kicker and he missed it, and the coach gets yelled at for not going forward or punting. Most teams in the NFL, they make 56-yarders. Heck, I mean, it's routine for a lot of these guys nowadays. So you got to find that kicker for a coach's state of mind and your offense, your defense, everybody. And when you're running your kicker out, nobody knows if he's going to make the kick. It's not fun for anybody. And there's going to be a lot of close games coming forward, in the division. With the Giants, this will be a close game, probably come down to a field goal, and they need the kicker to make these kicks.
Jay, what would your message to the coaching staff be? I know players, you get in front of the players, you're probably going to present positivity here after they're probably pretty down after week 1. Maybe you and you can tell me if I'm wrong, maybe you would chew them out. But what's your message to the coaching staff here as they kind of get ready to implement this week and, teaching points, et cetera? What would you be saying to your assistants now?
Well, I think you just got to find ways to motivate our players to play harder and play smarter. There's too many coverage blow-ups. The corner route for a touchdown, the guy's wide open, the nickel drop coverage for some reason, just let his guy go to the corner for a wide open touchdown. Number one, you got to get the people in the building to get them motivated to play hard. And number two, you got to have a plan. And let's have the best plan you've ever had this week against the New York Giants. We got to get after the Giants' ass without a doubt. Let's coach our players up. Let's be positive and make sure that when they leave the building, they feel really good about the plan and where they're at physically and mentally.